hell are you? Trying something new with the setup for now. Will it stay? Will it go? Nobody knows. But today we're talking about the Eleusis Amphora, which is a lovely piece of pottery depicting some of the earliest known depictions of ancient Greek myth upon it, and a surprise inside, like a wee Kinder egg. That was an absolutely horrific joke once you find out what's actually inside it. We're going to look at why this amphora is so special and take a deeper dive into the myths that are portrayed upon it and the significance and wider. It'll be more fun than it sounds, I promise. I have actually filmed this video already once and I took an absolute flaky at it, so we're trying again. And now you can see at least, oh, you can see both of them. Both of my degrees. I am qualified enough to talk about this stuff. Thank you! Ignore the mess in the background. I'm still trying to figure out how to set up this room. Like and subscribe. Let's go talk about an amphora for 15 minutes. The Eleusis Amphora is a Proto-ATTIC neck amphora found in Eleusis! No way! And it dates to around 670 to 650 BCE. If you've seen my Eagle Bearer's Guide to Eleusis video, it's the same sort of place. It was created by the Polyphemos Painter, who is one of, if not the first, artists to depict ancient Greek mythical narrative upon their ceramics. Before this, the sort of main trend in art, we had the geometric period, which is very much geometric shapes, hence the name, geometric period. There were depictions of animals and people, but they were much more like stick figure sort of creations. There was no details, and there was certainly no, from our modern perspective, there was no narrative applied to these scenes. Certainly none connecting to wider myth. The reason they're known as the Polyphemos Painter is because they drew Polyphemos on the vessel. It's as simple as that. What would such a large vessel actually be used for? I bet you're wondering, maybe, if you care. It's absolutely massive. It's like 4'7" or something like that. Plus, its elaborate decoration lets us know that it was probably some sort of funerary monument. Usually such amphora were used as grave markers and that sort of thing. This is confirmed by, and trigger warning here, the remains of a 10 to 12-year-old little boy found inside of it.
A child. No.
I told you it was like a Kinder egg. I'm so going to hell for that. That's awful. But this is a very unusual use for an amphora like this, right? It wasn't supposed to be for the boy. The sort of reconstructed narrative using all the sort of evidence and clues, right? The amphora was created for someone's funerary monument. It's been cut open so the remains of the boy could be put inside it, and then it's all been stuck back together again. So we can assume that this boy has died unexpectedly. Perhaps the funerary monument was for another family member. Bodies in amphora like this, even though they're that big, very unusual, especially for children. We can assume the boy died unexpectedly, so he's not been given the usual funerary rites as would be expected, because he was seemingly deposited like with haste into this amphora, which was already created probably for like his gran or something, I don't know. Moving on to the imagery depicted upon it, this is where it's going to get a bit heavy, alright? We're going to be delving in deep to some really thick mythological topics here, okay? And it's just a quick rundown. Anyway, the imagery on the amphora is incredibly fragmented because when it was found in modernity, shall we say, the amphora was found already broken up into lots of little pieces, and archaeologists had to reconstruct the vessel. Hopefully they've done it correctly and it's all facing the right way and all that. I mean, it looks fine to me, so I'm assuming they did. The images can be split into three main areas upon the vessel. We got the neck, which is Odysseus blinding the Cyclops Polyphemos. We've got the shoulder, which is some form of animal fight, and then on the body we've got Perseus fleeing the sisters of Medusa after he's beheaded her. Let's talk about the animals on the shoulder first, because oh my god, bless them. Look at them. What is that? Folk all across scholarship have described them as different animals because, I mean, we can't really tell what they are. I think the best bet and the safest bet is to say that it's a herbivore fighting a carnivore. It's probably some sort of like a lion or a panther, maybe a wolf? I don't know, I didn't draw it. And then the other one could possibly, I mean, it's got a horn, which would make you think it's a rhino. Geographically, where we assume like, oh, you don't have rhinos in Greece, maybe in the past they did. I don't know. I'm not one of these people that's actually studied the movements of animals through time, but people have done that. So it could be anything. Could be a boar, could be a weird looking bear, I don't know. Maybe the Polyphemos Painter didn't get out much, right? Maybe they were drawn based on descriptions from other people who did actually go out and like hunt and travel and all that, right? And just sort of made it up in their mind based on what these people were telling them. Or maybe they did see these animals up close and just weren't very good at drawing them. I'm not very good at drawing animals. I mean, I can't draw anyway, but people have artistic preferences and like strengths and weaknesses in their art, and maybe the Polyphemos painter was like, I can draw myth really, really good, but animals, no. Mythical monsters are their strong point. I'm trying to cut a long dead painter some slack here, but honestly, whatever these animals are, just bless them. Bless them both, because they really need it. Let's start from the top now, Maestro, with the Polyphemos scene on the neck of the Amphora. We're about to get into it, besties. Here we go. Have we all read the Odyssey? No? Let's read the entire thing together right now. I'm absolutely joking. Get your own copy, but if you're going to get your own one, I suggest this one by Emily Wilson, because very good, very shiny, very cool, and I'm rereading it just now, in case anybody cares about that. The Odyssey is an epic poem created by the epic poet Homer, who's the same guy who wrote the Iliad. If you're, as I always say, if you're familiar with the film Troy, that's like the most known retelling of the Iliad story. But the Odyssey comes after the Iliad because it's after the war is finished. And it's about big Odysseus, hence the name Odyssey, trying to sail home from Troy to Ithaca, and it takes him like 10 years because he's a wido and he just says things to the wrong people and adds an extra like 5 years onto his journey every time. So a journey that should not take him that long takes 10 years. One of these stops that he takes is at wherever Polyphemos stays. I can't remember the name of the place right now, but they stop off at Polyphemos' house, his cave, because they want to grab some supplies for the journey, and instead of just being decent and being like, alright mate, I'll trade you this for this, what can you give us? He just steals stuff. Him and a few of his pals end up locked inside Polyphemos' cave with Polyphemus and all of his sheep. He's rolled a big stone over it that Odysseus and his wee tiny guys cannot move by themselves, so they're stuck. And Polyphemus starts eating the men, naturally. Obviously, he's a Cyclops. So Odysseus gets chatting with him and tries to, like, stop him from eating his friends and try to figure out how they're going to get out of this place. So he's plying him with wine. He's getting them really, really drunk. And then Polyphemus is like, oh, what's your name? Where'd you come from? And Odysseus is like, my name is No Man. That will make sense in a minute, I promise. And eventually Polyphemus gets so drunk that he passes out. And while he's passed out drunk, Odysseus and his few surviving pals take Polyphemus' massive club, sharpen it to a point. They then ram it into Polyphemus' yak, into his eye. Polyphemus jumps up, he's screaming abdabs, he's going crazy, he's in a lot of pain, he can't see, right? The other Cyclopses outside the cave come along and they're like, Polyphemus, what's going on? And Polyphemus goes, no man is hurting me. Nobody's hurting him. They think he's absolutely crazy, screaming abdabs through the night, when really he's being attacked by Odysseus and his men. Polyphemus can no longer see, so he can't find Odysseus and his men in the cave. All they have to do is keep quiet until the morning, when Polyphemus rolls back the stone to let his little sheep out. So morning comes. Polyphemus rolls back the stone to let the sheep leave, but as they leave, he's feeling the top of each little sheep to make sure that the men aren't getting out. He wants to try and catch them on their way out the door. But Odysseus, because I say Odysseus is a wido, but he's also known for being incredibly smart, right? That is like his thing. He's the smart one. I call him a wido because he also is a wido, but he is incredibly smart compared to like other heroes in the ancient Greek world. And what Odysseus and his men do is they lash themselves with rope, attach themselves to like the underside of the sheep, and then when Polyphemus is like just feeling on top, going, that's a sheep, that's a sheep, that's a man, he doesn't feel them because obviously they're on the underside. He's not picking up each sheep and examining it. He's just like feeling the top to make sure that the men aren't getting out. So they're out and they're free, and they actually take the sheep on their ship and they take all of his stuff and they're like, haha, we're away. But Odysseus is a wido. This is where his wido energy comes to play, because he can't help himself. He has to gloat about the fact that he has just outsmarted Polyphemos. So they're on the ship and they're sailing away, and he goes, ha, you big idiot, I'm not No Man, I'm Odysseus, and I just outsmarted you and I've took all your sheep. But Polyphemus is a bit of a nepo baby and has a really famous and powerful dad by the name of Poseidon. Not only is Polyphemus just a child of Poseidon, he's Poseidon's favourite Cyclops son. So when Polyphemus is like, Dad, he's blinded me and he's took all my stuff, Poseidon immediately is like, Odysseus isn't getting away with that. So Polyphemus launches a rock at the ship of Odysseus as it's sailing away. Mind, he's not got far to go till he gets home. He launches the stone and it misses the front of the boat. And Odysseus is like, hi, you idiot, you can't see, you can't even aim properly. And Poseidon takes control. He's like, you're in my domain, you little idiot, you little wido. And the waves from the stone knock Odysseus' boat so far off course that he does not get home anytime soon. He's off again. on the next bit of his adventure. Now that I've given you that sort of rundown of that bit of the myth, now going back to the actual image on the amphora, we can see this is not a one-to-one recreation of that entire bit. However, the whole sort of scene has been condensed to fit the available physical space on the pot. The Polyphemos Painter has included a lot of iconography, I guess, so that the viewer who would see this image would then recognise, oh, that's clearly Odysseus because he's outlined in white, different from the rest of his men. They've got the spear in their hands, there's the little wine cups and such around them, and then you got Polyphemus up against the sort of arms of the vessel right at the side, who is much larger. You can clearly see his eye, and yes, his eye is open, even though Polyphemus is supposed to be asleep when he's stabbed in the eye, but it's so that it's more visually, like, if the eye was closed it wouldn't be nearly as obvious. The Polyphemos Painter has included enough visual elements to ensure that the viewer understands the image that they're looking at. This could also be due to, like, regional and local differences within the story, because these mythological narratives were passed down through oral tradition, by word of mouth, by people actually performing the stories. They weren't written down for a long time after they were created. There were little variations depending on who was telling the story and how they were telling it, and that would possibly, like, create little variations, but nothing so crazy as to change the entire storyline. The way that these stories were performed in oral tradition, I need to do a whole video on oral tradition as well. It's sort of like a stand-up comedy routine or whatever, where they would rehearse it in their brain and they would know that this bit links to that bit and that word links to that word and what comes next, if that makes sense. I can do a whole video on that because that's not a good explanation. Sorry! Now let's bring it on down to the belly of the amphora. We see my girl, my darling Medusa, beheaded, cut down in her prime by Perseus. This scene is the aftermath of her beheading, and we can see Perseus and Athena fleeing Medusa's two sisters as they chase after them because they've killed their sister. Again, there is variations to the storyline. In fact, this myth has a lot of variation, especially over time with various authors changing bits and whatnot. But I'm going to give you the general gist rundown of this one. Trigger warning here for essay, by the way. But it is a big part of Medusa's story, unfortunately. Medusa is mortal, Stheno and Euryale, her two sisters, are not. They are immortal Gorgons. Perseus, who is one of the better heroes, but he happened to kill my girl, so I don't like him. Perseus was challenged by his wicked stepdad, essentially, to go off and bring back the head of the Gorgon Medusa because his stepdad was weird. And basically, to get Perseus out of the picture, he gave him this impossible task so that he could just be with Perseus's mum all the time. But because he's a hero, he gets help from Athena and Hermes and Hephaestus, among other gods actually. They all really rally around him to help him to complete this task and then get back to his stepdad and eventually kill him. Medusa is a Gorgon who, of course, she has the snakes for her hair, and if she sees you, she's going to turn you to stone. Some sources say that she was born like that, she was born a Gorgon. Another is that she was human once and then she was turned into that by Athena because, now again, this is trigger warning, Medusa and Poseidon got it on in a temple to Athena, whether it was consensually or not. There's conflicting sources about that. Either way, it happened inside a temple to Athena. Athena, who is the god who wasn't even conceived normally, and she's very much pure virginal lady, right? Athena was raging because this is a big, like, desecration of her temple, so she cursed Medusa with the stone site and the snakes for hair as her punishment. Then she helps Perseus to kill Medusa, and also Athena can't really take out her grudge on Poseidon because that's her uncle and he's god of the sea, and it's probably easier to target a little mortal Gorgon lady. So she's not very girls supporting girls, to be honest. Perseus uses Athena's mirrored shield to sneak up on Medusa without looking at her directly and beheads her whilst her sisters sleep. From her neck wound sprouts Chrysaor, Pegasus, and Deuce Gorgon, her children fathered by Poseidon. Ew! Kind of gross, but I'm going to swiftly move on from it. Perseus then enters a high-speed chase with her two sisters, right? Because obviously they're raging. He escapes with Athena's help and he pops a wee invisibility cap on so they can't actually see him because he's a coward, isn't he? There is also a new view of this myth. Classical literature and stuff like that in myth, they're all very much through old white men lenses, and we're trying to challenge that view nowadays, which I love. If you'd like to hear more about that, I highly recommend Pandora's Jar by Natalie Haynes. Great book, all about women in Greek myths, and actually not retelling the myths, just thinking about it from the female's perspective rather than the female just being seen as a prop in the stories, which they have been seen for for ages. Anyway, this sort of new modern challenging view is that Athena's curse upon Medusa was actually a backhanded blessing to protect Medusa from every other man in existence ever again. Try and make her ugly by giving her snakes for hair, but also, if that doesn't put the guy off, maybe actually turning him to stone would help. Both that and the traditional telling of the myth have their own strengths and weaknesses, but let's get back to how that image is transferred onto the ceramic. That's not a big tadpole lying to the left of the image, that is Medusa's beheaded body. Next come her sisters, the Gorgons, with their big round heads facing forwards, which is usual for Gorgons, especially usually when it comes to human characters or gods or heroes, they are facing side on the vessel, but Gorgons usually look face forward. Another example of this is the Corfu Medusa, who I absolutely love. And you can tell that they're in motion chasing something because they have their arms outstretched to one side and the motion of their skirts sort of blowing back suggests that they're running after something. And next up, side on, facing the sisters, is Athena, dressed all in white in her big elaborately decorated gown. She's warding off the sisters, whilst Perseus gets the hell out of Dodge, Johnny. But the image is so fragmented here that we can only really see his wee legs and his wee feet and his wee winged boots that he's got on. Really can't see much of him at all. For the best, because I'd be raging at him. But he's a big feared, he can't even face the sisters of the women that he's just brutalised for his own gain. Even though you could argue that Perseus he's still one of the better, sort of nicer heroes, but the Republic, new Discord name, is a Medusa apologist state, okay? I've just had a little epiphany, as I've been telling you that there, by the way, that I was trying to think, like, why these two images? Why Polyphemus and why Medusa? Why are they both being shown on this? And then I thought, they're both sort of linked to Poseidon, aren't they? We've got Polyphemus, who is the child of Poseidon, and Medusa, who is, for better or worse, the mother of his 2 children. I nearly said 3, but scoring was a joke, okay? But 2 children. To some of you, that's going to be like, of course, that's so obvious. But hey, it's early in the morning for me. My little brain's still waking up. Monster slaying myths became really popular in Greek art in like the 7th century as well. It was a time of Greek colonisation of the eastern shorelines. So folk would hear stories about heroes like Odysseus travelling really far away from their homeland and then, you know, reminiscing and wanting to get home. Or heroes like Perseus who again have to leave their home to then travel very far and make the return again. So your regular, average, everyday folks looking at a vessel like this, they would resonate possibly with these images if they were travelling, or if they had family members travelling, they'd probably be worried, oh my god, is my granddad going to run into a cyclops on his journey? That could have easily provided the Polyphemos painter with some sort of motive for painting such myths onto the ceramics in the first place. Or maybe the Polyphemos painter really liked the idea of the children and the sort of relatives of Poseidon and wanted to sort of convey that in some way. Maybe they were a big Poseidon head, I don't know. Again, I wasn't there, I can't ask them. You can't fit the entire myth, you can't fit a whole book like that, or whole story onto a vessel. There's just not physically enough space, especially if you want to tell 2 stories. So again, elements have been condensed to maximise the storytelling in the limited space through iconographical images that people are going to recognise. So making Odysseus stand out from his men by painting him in a different sort of manner. His men are all silhouetted, whereas he's outlined in white. Polyphemus being much larger at the side of the image with his one eye open, so it's very obvious, hey, he's only got one eye, by the way, and a spear's hurtling towards it. Same with the Medusa image. Yes, Medusa herself is dead in the background, but her sisters are, in typical Gorgonian form, front-facing, so you can see the entire face, you can see the hair, you can see their teeth, you can see their wild eyes. In terms of iconography of Athena, I did a bit of this on my dissertation, actually. She's in a white dress, a very elaborately decorated dress, which is like, for a goddess, yeah, fair. Later symbols that we would know to associate with Athena being her helmet, or shield, things like that, she's not got. But also there is a big chunk of her missing halfway down. She could well be holding a shield or something. We just can't see. And we can assume that although Perseus has mostly been lost, he could maybe be carrying the shield and Medusa's head. He might be wearing his invisibility cap. We just can't see that much from that bit of the image. In its full glory, viewers who were hearing these stories through performances every other day would be incredibly familiar with the scene painted on these pots. On this pot. There's only one that we have. I don't think they were mass produced and all painted the exact same. Regardless, these are some incredible early images for Greek myth depicted on ceramics. Whether the Polyphemos painter was the actual genuine first person to try doing this, or was amongst the first, or maybe they'd already started this for a good couple hundred years and we just haven't found the evidence for it. That's what I love about archaeology, baby. But that's all for this week. Teehee. Cheers for watching, everyone, if you've made it to the end. Sorry it got a bit deep into the myths there, but I had to tell yous, because I can't explain these images without yous knowing the myth behind them. Obviously, that would make my life incredibly difficult. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if you'd like any videos about any other aspect that I've spoke about today, whether it's diving further into Odysseus or Perseus or other myths. Maybe you have a favourite Greek myth that you'd like me to talk a bit about and how that's been portrayed in art, because trust me, there's loads of them. Oh my god, there's so much Greek ceramic art out there that is basically like the equivalent of like fan art today, when you think about it, for like a film. It's essentially all that. But I mean, I guess it's not only storytelling for them, that's also religion for ancient Greeks and such. That's a different topic for another time, sorry. My bibliography and my further reading and image sources and all that are going to be linked below if you'd like to go and check all that out. I'll also leave all the links to my socials and stuff. Don't forget to like if you liked the video and if you learned something, and hit subscribe as well. Still trying to aim for 1,000 followers before 2024 and I'm getting nervous, guys. I'm getting really nervous. But cheery bye everyone. Have a lovely rest of your week and I shall see you all next Tuesday. Thank you.